Chapter 19 Brief History. Lies rose from her throne? Her sister was sitting on a throne, and walked with an unusual dignity and grace down the hewn steps. The elf girl didn't say a word, but when she reached Glissa she stopped and stared long and hard into her older sister's eyes. Glissa returned the stare, but after a moment she arched an eyebrow and asked, "Looking for something?" Lies straightened and called up to the platform. "It is Glissa!" She returned to the older girl and swept her into a hug. Glissa held her sister tightly, tears welling up into her eyes. "Lies, I'm so sorry," she said. "Sorry I've been gone. I was trapped." "I know," Lies said, smiling through tears. "We had given up all hope, but then Brenna found a way to get through. Glissa, you're alive. So why are you... I'm the Kana. What's a Kaha? Kanha, I'm married to... You're married? Yes, I'm the... Kanha. You said that. You mean you're married to... The Ka, Yiksha rumbled, striding purposefully down the steps. "We welcome you to our temporary home. You have come at an opportune time, Glissa of the Tangle." "Hold on a minute," Glissa said, poking a finger into Yiksha's chest, stopping the surprised Leonin in his tracks. "Lies, you married Raksha?" No," Lies said, and her eyes fell to the floor. "Raksha is... Glissa, Raksha is gone. Yiksha and I..." Her sister shrugged. Glissa was floored. Lies had displayed a crush on Raksha Golden Cub, but Yiksha? It was unexpected, to say the least. "Raksha's dead? Brenna, why didn't you tell me?" "We asked her to bring you here without delay," Yaksha said. "Once you'd been detected, we could do nothing else." "Explaining about Raksha would have only slowed us down," Brenna explained sadly. "It is not a tale I enjoy relating, truthfully. He may not be dead, but he is no longer with us." "Yes, but all say Glissa should know everything, huh?" Dwugget growled, hopping down from his own throne to join the impromptu discussion. "Thanks, Dwugget," Glissa said to the wizened little goblin. "I think. Hey, why did your men attack me last, decade?" "You full of questions, huh? Just like the rest of us," the old cleric said, nodding sagely. "But there is much to tell, from many angles and much arguing. That's always fun. We have some time now, huh? All talk over dinner, then action." He winked. "All friends now, huh?" "If you say so," Glissa sighed. She didn't know what to make of Dwugget's presence, but he had helped her long ago when her life had first gone crazy, and Slowbad had trusted him. Still, the old goblin seemed filled with tension under his jolly demeanor, shifting on his feet a little too much. She would have to keep an eye on him. Her belly rumbled. The goblin's mention of food reminded her she couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten, but she knew it was at least 5 years ago. "All friends now," Glissa nodded, "so let's eat." The meal was set out like a feast, though compared even to the meals that Glissa's mother had prepared on special occasions, the pickings were sparse. The Leonin royal family, of which Glissa guessed she was now part of, had obviously fallen on hard times, to say the least. Still, no food had tasted so good in quite a while. "All right," Glissa began without ceremony. "I'll tell you what I know, or what I've been able to figure out. You fill in the rest, and we'll go from there." She arched an eyebrow when she saw her sister, Dwugget, Yiksha, and Brenna exchange furtive looks. "We are all going to level with each other," she added. Before she could continue, a goblin guard scuttled into the room and whispered something in Dwugget's ear. The goblin rose politely with the gingerness of the aged. "Excuse me, my friends," the old goblin said. "A theological dispute has broken out." Without another word, the goblin followed the goblin out of the dining room. "Theological dispute?" Glissa asked. With a wave, Yiksha dismissed the remaining goblin guards, who scuttled after Dwugget. The car nodded to Brenna, who continued. When the green sun rose into the sky 5 years ago, the goblin tribes very nearly degenerated into complete anarchy, Bruenna explained. The event confirmed many prophecies that the shamanic leaders had long held to be heresies, and hundreds of goblins had been exiled for executing or espousing them. The cult of Krak, Glissa said. Heretics. But the only surviving group of heretics out there, thanks to you, Lias said. The goblins didn't want to destroy their own society, nor could they follow the old leadership. Dwagit saw an opportunity, and when he marched right into the tunnels and started preaching to the tribes about Krak and his journey, about Mother's heart, well, the goblins lapped it up. Her sister shrugged. They made him the new shaman, renamed the mountain Krak, but it wasn't easy for Dwagit to maintain order at first. He'd be the first to tell you he worked with some shady characters to keep the goblins in line back then. Once Raksha and I managed to get in to see him, Dwagit was more than happy to talk about an alliance. For one thing, it let him get rid of thugs like Aldorok Vectro. Vectro is dead? Glissa asked. Once the alliance was sealed, Lias said. Any of the Volshok mercenaries that Dwagit knew had been abusive or murderous to goblins ended up breaking ore in the mines. And now Dwagit personally intercedes whenever theological arguments break out. Why? Have you ever seen a goblin theological dispute? Lias asked. Right, Glissa said. From what Sobed had told her, such disputes were usually considered finished when one side was roasting in the great furnace. Glissa wanted to ask again how her sister had ended up the wife of a Leonin monarch, but she decided to wait until the two could talk privately. She catalogued everything else she knew for then, and finally showed them Gef's head after the servants cleared the table for food. Yukshar's reaction was violent and immediate. Abomination! The Leonin cried and drew a long knife. No, wait! Glissa shouted. She held her arms protectively over Gef's head. He's on our side. I know it stinks, but... My car, Lias purred, placing a hand on her husband's sword arm. Please. The Leonin growled, but relented at the elf's touch, keeping one eye on Glissa's grisly companion. He replaced the blade and returned to his seat, but still stared daggers at Gef's head. It wasn't until then that Glissa noticed she'd readily protected Gef. She chalked it up to the fact that she was still convinced the necromancer's head would prove useful somehow. And it wasn't as if he took up much space, or ate anything. He hadn't even talked for days, in fact. Glissa flipped open the lid to make sure the smelly thing hadn't finally expired. You all right? She asked. Don't start that, Gef's head replied. Glissa shut the flap and set the bag next to her chair. Good thing they had finished eating. Opening Gef's bag was always an olfactory adventure. Now, what no one has told me, but I'm starting to guess, Glissa told them all, is that you've learned something new. You thought I was dead, then you didn't. She locked eyes with Bruenna. Tell me you've learned something. Tell me anything. What would you like to know first? Bruenna asked. What happened to Raksha? Glissa asked. The dining room fell silent except for the clink of silverware on silver plates. Finally, Yukshar sighed. Very well. We'd hoped we could cover this later, but you have the right to know. And, Glissa, it's important that you know that this is not your fault, Lias added. How could it be my fault? Glissa asked. I've been frozen or something. Our cousin, the noblest and most honourable Ka since the days of Great Dekan, walked the plains and disappeared 3 years ago, Yukshar said. Impossible, Glissa said. It's true, Bruenna said. He saw the end coming, I think, Lias said, and decided he would rather all of us die than lose his den home. Glissa, Raksha destroyed Tajnar. If I hadn't caught him in the act, we would all have perished. Raksha destroyed Tajnar? That's insane, Glissa said, slamming her goblet onto the table. How? Why? I told you why. I found him planting some kind of explosive, Lias said sharply. It was called a mana bomb, Brenna broke in. Apparently Raksha had gotten one from the Vidalcan. The Vidalcan created them, but had never had a reason to use them. Just one can wipe out several acres. Fortunately, Tajnar itself protected most of us from the brunt of the blast, though at a terrible cost. Afterwards, Raksha blamed me. If it weren't for Yiksha, he might have killed me. Our cousin was raving. A madman, Yaksha said. But we could not execute him, not even after what he had done. No Khan, no matter how insane, can be allowed to face death anywhere but on his feet. Yet we could not allow him back into the field to face an honourable end either. For one thing, there was no battlefield. It was all we could do to get the survivors up here to Krakholm. Exile was the only solution, Yaksha said. He was given a long knife, a zauk, and cast out into the dead of night. That's it? Glissa said. Do you know where he went? Something about this was rubbing her the wrong way. A few of our scouts reported seeing a Leonin on Zaukbak headed to the Tangle on the night he disappeared, Yaksha replied bitterly. That alone should tell you his fate. We should have sent someone to record his death, according to ancient lore. But no scouts could be spared, of course. He was mad, but in the end he did the honourable thing. The creatures of the Tangle are fierce, my wife tells us. And naturally you were next in line, Glissa said. The men, all of us after the fall of the home den, needed a leader. A sane leader. If Raksha is not dead, he might as well be. He is beyond redemption for this act. Sounds to me like there's plenty of blame to go around, Glissa said. All right, I'll accept Raksha's out the picture. I'll even accept that you are the queen. Kana? The S interrupted. Kana, and I'll accept Tajnar's gone. But how did you find me? What have I been doing all this time? A year ago, Brenna said, staring back to the subject, I figured out a way to work around the Vidalcan's dampening fields. They communicate telepathically. Now entirely. It's tied to the serum. I figured, Glissa said. Yurt reeked of serum too. Really? Brenna asked, genuinely surprised. You must have gotten close. Far too close, Glissa agreed. How's the neck? Sore. Sorry, anyway, the Vidalcan is saturated in serum. When Memnarch changed them, made them more ferocious, I think the serum production and intake increased exponentially. You haven't seen it yet, Glissa, but when the suns go down there are hardly any stars left in the sky. But the stars, they're blink moths. The Vidalcan are using them up too. Yurt as well. I guess, whatever the reason, they can communicate over any distance now at the speed of thought. Their attacks of late have been flawlessly executed, and if Yurt reeked of the serum 5 years ago. Brenna stood and turned to Yaksha, who Glissa still had trouble thinking of as the car. That confirms it, Yaksha. The Nim and Memnox Vidalcan armies are attacking at the same time in a coordinated effort. Indeed, the car growled. Brenna turned back to Glissa. I brought up the Vidalcan telepathy because I found that an enterprising mage with a grudge and a scrying crystals can sometimes hear their thoughts as plain as day. The mage grinned. It's not pleasant, and Dekan knows I can't understand more than a quarter of it. But I did find a way through the teleportation shield that seals off Lumen Grid when one of the Vidalcan became trapped outside. In the Tangle. I think. You had to have the shield open to get back in. They're not very creative. It was pretty pedestrian magic once I took a good look at it. You broke into Lumen Grid? Glissa asked. I teleported in. But to do it, I had to break through some auras. That was how I eventually confirmed you were still alive. The Vidalcan are fanatical about keeping records and archives. I popped up into their central library. My father used to work there as a servant. Brenna downed her mug of oily Leonin pseudo-nush and refilled it in one fluid movement. Even now that the Vidalcan don't speak, they still write everything down. It's compulsive. There were records of everything. troop dispatch orders, complete lists of every last artifact beast in Memnok's army, maps of secret tunnels to the interior. Please tell me you took one of those maps, Glissa interrupted. Yes, and orders about moving a precious cargo from the dross to the interior. Me? Glissa asked. You. So, to make a short story long, I figured out that when they were moving you and made sure I was in position to pull you out as soon as there was an opening. It wasn't easy, and you know the rest. And at last we arrive at the point. Patience, my car. Glissa, we could spend all night filling you in on everything. It's been a long 5 years. But what's important is what you have learned. The Mephidros has grown, and yet now controls over half the surface. The Nim and the Vidalcan and worse surround us, and I figured out how to break into the Vidalcan's line of communication. And I have found something in the grid that might give us a chance to turn our fortunes around. Brenna rose and plucked a roll of wide foil parchment from a pouch on her belt and spread it on the table in front of Glissa, pinning down the corners with goblets and cups. We know that Yurt's surging strength has something to do with Memnok. His part in your abduction? I found something. It's a talisman that might also be a weapon, if you can get your hands on it. A weapon against what? Glissa asked. The leathery parchment bore a painstakingly coloured and labelled coalstone sketch. The sketch depicted a simple round design with angular shapes sliced from the edges, making the shape resemble an asymmetrical saw blade. A pentagon was etched into the centre of the object, and at each point of the shape was a differently coloured gemstone that had been mounted. I've seen that pattern before. On Cauldra, Glissa said. This might be even older. According to this, it may actually be as old as the Guardian himself, Brenna said. It gives the possessor power over the mindless and the soulless, Brenna said. It's called the Mirror Core, and Yurt's got it. The mage held her hand about 8 inches apart. It's about so wide in either direction and heavy. According to this document, it's forged from some alloy I've never seen. Even Dwugget said he'd never heard of it, and none of the goblin blacksmiths think it's even real. But I saw it. I saw it around his neck when I escaped 5 years ago. So it controls the soulless? How? What does that mean exactly? Glissa said. Brenna launched into a long technical explanation of the talisman, much of which went sailing over Glissa's head. But the gist of it was that the miracle could channel the wearer's willpower and force anything without a sentient mind, such as the simpler animals, zombies like the Nim, or the constructs to do its bidding. Its origins were unclear, though the angular geometric Vidalcan script confirmed the talisman's antiquity. Gef's head volunteered that he hadn't needed such a talisman to get the Nim to do what he wanted. That's actually a good point, Leas interrupted. What the head said. Yet was, and still is, an amateur, Gef continued from the bag after prodding the flap open with his temple. He'd be nothing without the Mirror Core. Now me, I'm a wizard, the greatest necromancer this plane has ever known. Was a wizard, Glissa corrected. Don't get any ideas or I'm giving you to Yukshar. The elf girl turned to Brenna. So I get this Mirror Core away from Yurt and the Nim lose their controller? And then, most of the forces allied against us become easy pickings for our troops. With this talisman in our possession, we could control the Nim ourselves and seize the silver beast from the Vidalcan's grasp. With luck, we won't have to, Brenna said. There's something more. It was in a separate record when I located you. I was also able to track down Memnok. It was dumb luck. I didn't expect to find anything, but I had time, so... What did you find? Glissa asked. 5 years. 5 years and no one has seen him. His armies spread out over the surface, but Memnok himself? Nowhere. I found out why. Bruina, Glissa is tired. We should rest before we get into this, Lies said. No, my Kana, I must disagree. I looked into the serum transfer records. I found out most of the supply was being diverted to one place, the Panopticon. I dug around a bit more and found out that the serum was for Memnock. He's hibernating, burning away some kind of taint. Taint? Glissa said. He's making himself sane? It's a contaminant, Verona said. He was being consumed by flesh. He's using half the serum the Vidalcan can produce to rid himself of it. Memnock is converting himself back to pure metal. Why? He believes it will allow him to ascend. But he made a mistake, Verona said. If he's metal, I might be able to hurt him, Glissa said. Maybe kill him. Exactly, Verona said. But there is a catch. Of course there is, Glissa said. I retrieved you from the interior early, Verona said. There are still 5 days until Memnock will emerge. Perfect, Glissa said. I can take him out while he sleeps. Glissa, you cannot touch him until the cleansing process is complete, Verona said. Like you, he is outside of time, in the Panopticon, inside some kind of machine. But when he emerges, he will be a different being, one you can destroy. On the 5th day, the suns will rise as one, and you have to be in the Panopticon. You will take an honor guard of my finest troops, Yukshar said. No commandos, no sky hunters, no honor guard, Glissa said. I've got 4 days. When I do this, I'll do it alone, with no one to slow me down. Give me supplies and I'll take a Terran if you've got one to spare. If not, Verona, I'll need transportation. Are you sure? Lies asked. We just found you, Glissa. And when this is all over, I'll find you again, Glissa said. First, I have to find Yurt, and quickly. Verona, maybe teleportation magic? A huge rumbling suddenly shook the cave and sent goblets tumbling and chairs toppling. A breathless Leonin guard bolted into the dining room and momentarily grabbed the table to keep his balance. Something the elf girl had never seen a Leonin do before. Glissa struggled to keep her own footing, scooped up Gef's head and slung it over her shoulder, and then drew her sword. A weapon might not stop this sudden quake, but it made her feel more secure. The harried Leonin soldier headed straight for Yukshar and shouted over the thunderous din. My car! The Nim have breached the southwest perimeter. They've brought... My car, the Nim have vampires among them. 2 arms! Yukshar bellowed, clutching a small amulet that was apparently enchanted to send his voice rumbling through the tunnels and over the roar of the ongoing quake. The enemy has entered Krakholm. Sounds like Yurt's coming to you, Gef's head shouted, only audible to Glissa because of his proximity to her ears. She suspected the head was right. Not one of them noticed the mere creature clinging to the high ceiling, concealed by shadows in its own chameleonic metal skin. As the elf girl continued to speak animatedly to the mage, the Mir's master decided he had learned enough. The small, agile creature scuttled into the ventilation shaft and disappeared.